right, welcome in. This is episode 22 of the Individual Skills Hockey Podcast and the second of season 2. We're joined today with Mikey Spencer, head JV coach at Wayzata High School, and Pat O'Leary. I don't think Pat's going to talk a whole lot, but he said he wanted to maybe chime in if he wanted to. How you guys doing today?
Doing well. Excited for this one.
Above average today. It's a great thing.
So for this episode, it's going to be a little bit different. Mikey reached out and wanted to interview the interviewer. So we're going to, I guess, talk about me today. Not something I usually enjoy doing. I like to not make it about me, but Mikey thought it would be a good idea. So I guess I'll hand the reins over to Mikey.
Yeah, I mean, I can preface a little bit more in saying, obviously, there's a lot of things I think I've learned from Miles, both Miles and Pat, but I think it'd be helpful just for the listeners out there to really, hear from the man behind the podcast and pick a little bit more into your brain. So without further ado, we'll get right into it here. Miles, tell us about yourself, maybe a little bit about your background and how you got involved in coaching.
Yeah, so grew up about a mile from here where we're sitting at the Plymouth Ice Center, and played Wayzata hockey all the way growing up, all the way through high school. Played golf and baseball as well. My senior year was actually Pat's first year as a head coach. I was a captain that year. And kind of going through high school, I was thinking about, kind of deciding between whether to play golf or hockey at the collegiate level. And after my junior year of golf season at Wayzata, had a really fantastic summer that year and started to get recruited at the D1 level. And that's kind of why I chose the golf path. Ended up playing at the University of South Dakota. And, looking back, what I do now, I sometimes think it would have been a little bit helpful to go the hockey route. But it was a great experience at South Dakota. And after I graduated there, playing 4 years of golf, always kind of knew I wanted to get back into coaching. It was kind of a funny story. There was an old coach, Mark Sorensen, that was a D coach in high school and also my Bantam coach. And I remember asking him as a senior one day, I was like, do you think I could be a good coach someday? And he's like, absolutely, you're on my coaching depth chart. And so it's just kind of funny there. And so after I graduated, I knew I wanted to get involved and got with a group of buddies, and we started coaching the Squirt A team at Wayzata, and the rest is history, I guess.
That's awesome. For the FCS listeners out there, that's the University of South Dakota, not South Dakota State University.
I think it's about 95% of the people say, were you a jackrabbit when they talk to me, and that makes me very upset, but USD is in the semifinals of the FCS football, so we're on the map.
Figured it was worth the clarification there.
Make sure you tune into that game. It should be a good one.
Tell us about maybe some of the stops along your coaching journey. How long have you been at it for now? What levels have you coached? Maybe ones you enjoyed more than others?
So, yeah, that first year was 2016, 2017, right out of college. Did the Squirt A's here at Wayzata. After that, I moved basically downtown Minneapolis, and for some reason I thought it would be too far to drive out here every day. I've been driving out here hundreds of times a year, so I guess that wasn't really true. So because of that, I coached the Minneapolis Squirt A's for a year with some dads. That was a great experience to get exposed to different types of people, different situation, I guess. After that, I realized it's only a 22-minute drive to pick, so the Bantam AA job opened up at Wayzata, and it was sent to me as an option to apply. Didn't end up getting that, but they decided to make me the Pee Wee AA coach. So I did that I did just that for 1 year with a couple buddies and a couple dads. That was an awesome experience. That group of players just graduated last year. And there were, and I also had those kids at Squirts because they were the second years of Squirts, second years of Pee Wees. I've always kind of considered that my introduction to coaching as far as like a core group of players. And then I think at that point, I was working in sales, and I started doing a lot of clinics for Pat, off season, spring, fall, summer, whatever the case may be, Monday night skills. And I think it was after that season we had a discussion of, I just kind of started to think this could be possible to do as a full-time job. And along with that, I know we had a discussion of I'd like to be on the high school staff in some capacity at that point. And then, long story short, Dave Brown ends up moving to Rogers. I think it was that year. I might be off on 1 year, but he ends up taking the head coaching job at Rogers, which opened up a spot on the varsity bench for Wayzata. So after getting on the varsity bench, I did the Pee-wees in addition to that, for 2 years.
Wow.
And that was, looking back, it was probably a mistake, because anytime we had a game, I wasn't there for the Pee-wees. I missed so much Pee-wee stuff. So after a couple of years of that, I just decided, it's not fair to these kids. So I stopped doing that. I loved that. That's my favorite age to to coach, other than high school, I would say, as far as like a youth age, because they're basically getting to the point where they're playing somewhat real hockey, but they're still young enough to absorb so much information. You can teach them so much. So that's my recommendation to any coach that wants to get involved is start with Pee-wees, because of those reasons. So that was a lot of stops along the way, but yeah.
Well, when you were working with Pee-wees, I guess I have to ask, was checking still involved in the Pee-wee age group at that point in time?
No, that was out. I don't know, Pat. You know when that went out?
Man, I can't even think about it anymore, but I know that was kind of the era of it being multiple years out, but also starting to either not reap the rewards or yes, reap the rewards of what it looked like, because what was happening, in my opinion, and you were there, but you're finding that when you leave your second year of Bantams, and then kids started playing high school hockey as a freshman, some of them had taken body contact for 12 months of their life, and then they go try to go in the corner with an 18-year-old senior.
Yeah.
I remember my first year of playing Pee-wee hockey. I was on the Pee-wee B1 team at Wayzata, and it was in Blake Ice Arena. And I went to go retrieve a puck in the right corner and got hit after I, made a play. And the next thing I knew was it was the third period and we were up 3-1. And I turned to the coach and I go, the scoreboard's wrong. The game just started. And so it's like, maybe that's a bad story to tell. That's why they got rid of checking and Pee-wees.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, in my opinion, I was so much more prepared for Bantams in high school because of those
100%.
experiences. Yeah.
So for people out there that are trying to maybe kind of make that transition or thinking about it, it's certainly something that's crossed my mind as far as kind of making a career in hockey. Any advice for those people in terms of, how to really jump into it, how to kind of, make that transition, as, I know you kind of left the business world and really jumped 100% into it, and I don't think you're having any regrets whatsoever. So
No, absolutely not. I think there's a few things you need to think about when you're considering it. Number one is, how much do you actually love the game? And what I was finding during that time for me, when I was doing all these clinics with so much, with corporate work and the hockey stuff, was my now fiance noticed, and she told me, you've never once complained about going to the rink, no matter what the skill the clinic was, whether it was mites, whether it was on a Sunday morning, whether it was Monday night skills, you haven't complained once. And she noticed that, and she said, that's rare, I think. And so that's number one. Number two is you have to have conversations with your loved ones about what this might look like, because without their support, in 3, 4, or 5 years' time, it will become a big issue for you. And then the third thing I think to think about is try to start to think about what the end goal is. And that doesn't have to be like a team you want to coach or something very specific, but start to think about what the path might look like and what you want to do, whether that's start a training company or coach teams or get involved in scouting or like those types of things. I think it's important early on to think about that so that you're prepared when things come up. But the number one thing I would say for advice is do a lot when you still have a job and figure out if you're going to get burnt out with it when all those other things are on your plate. So
100%. I mean, I'd say the situation itself and maybe the environment was helpful for you too, and just like having someone like Pat who's already kind of established a lot of, you know, the eye skills and things like that, just to be able to really kind of dive into as well and have other opportunities.
It was ideal. It was the best possible situation you could walk into because it was so familiar. I knew everyone. I'd already been coaching in this community. If it was somewhere else and I was in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, maybe it wouldn't have been as enjoyable early on.
100%. Appreciate that. Maybe, you know, to touch a little bit more on about you, and we can kind of shift gears here. Tell us about people that have impacted you along the way in wanting to be a coach, or, you know, have helped you kind of in furthering your own coaching career.
Just my youth coaches, you know, and my high school coaches. I think that's like an answer that someone would always say, but you really start to, you know, when you have good, and this is why it's so important in my job now to get good people involved, is when you have good people coaching our kids, it inspires them to love the game. And because of that, they're more likely to come back and coach. So, you know, and I just had our last episode with John O'Sullivan. It's like, it's not all about sunshines and rainbows, and it's my best coaches were the most demanding and took me from a place of, you know, I wasn't youth hockey. I wasn't a very good player. And they, throughout the process, they took me to a spot where, you know, I was able to play high school hockey for 3 years. So just a couple people that come to mind is Mark Sorensen, my Bantam coach, my D coach in high school. Judd Stevens was the captain of the Gophers, and he coached me in Bantams. Mark Nedovich was another Gopher on Bantam A staff. So that Bantam A staff, when you really kind of observe it, is high quality people. And then finally, obviously, Pat, being the D coach my first 2 years in high school, and the head coach when he was first starting out as a head coach, kind of created a relationship that is still doing okay, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, just to kind of piggyback that, you know, and just all those things you spoke about in the last 5 or 6 minutes, whether it's the hockey companies or being a coach or all those things, and you know, like, so to like speaking from myself and how it all translated to Miles, was the same thing he said. Is when I started, I just knew I wanted to be around hockey as much as I possibly could. I wasn't really thinking about the money part of it. And then, you know, but the hardest part about it is, and he kind of talked about it, is, you know, when you are passionate about something and you want to put your name on it, or you're in charge of something, the hardest part for, I don't want to say making it big, but, you know, making it reputable and respected, is, you know, you're always got to be there. And because if you're not, you feel like either people are looking for you, or maybe other people aren't teaching the way that you teach, which is totally fine. But finding another person like Miles or whoever else has worked with it, you know, same thing he deals with, like, you know, getting coaches for the youth program, that's like the most nerve-wracking part about it. You know, just having the trust and the respect that you have for the person that's going there to represent you. That could be your assistant coach on the high school team. That could be your assistant coach on a T-ball team. You know, you can't make it because your wife's sick. Like, okay, can you go run practice? you feel good when you don't have to ask those questions.
Yeah.
So.
And to go to the, whether it's a spouse or significant other or just your family in general, just to kind of paint a picture for people out there listening is, our schedule right now with my fiance. She goes to work in the morning, and in the winter, I'm home, and then usually on Monday, every day this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I'm not home until 10:30 at night. So we don't really see each other during the week, and it's like you have to have a person that understands, like, is supportive in it, and realizes like this is what you love to do, and it's gonna affect how we live. But so that's just, again, like, stress that, and the amount of support that we all get from our people is incredible.
Yeah, I took one season off in 15 years, and I think it was December of that year that my wife looked at me and was like, I don't care what happens, you need to get back into this, because I don't want to.
Well, we joke all the time with one of our other assistant coaches, Bill Rooney, who's been a teacher for 30 years and coached for 30, whatever it's been, a lot, and he has a support system at home with his wife, and she always can tell, like, when the season starts, she's like, "What are you doing here? Why are you home? Like, go to your game or go to your practice, and I'll talk to you when you get home." And it's just, you get a little bit of routine on that stuff, but the schedule stuff is definitely a little bit different than usual. It's not like, everyone, you get home and, have dinner, and then, whatever the case may be, like, you pick your times that you, take family time, or, date night, or whatever the case may be. And, but I think the whole point of that is what Miles said earlier, is like the passion part of it comes out in you as a human as well. And your spouse respects that, and just as much as you respect what they do. It's just a different animal.
100%. Awesome. That was great. Switching gears maybe a little bit here, and this could be a question, honestly, for you both, but we'll start with Miles. Your coaching philosophy, what things you try to accomplish regardless of the group in front of you, maybe some inherent kind of principles that you bring to just what you want to accomplish in coaching, I suppose, the high school team as it is right now.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I've thought about this over the last couple of years, and kind of the three things I think about what makes a good coach, the three kind of core qualities, is number one, you have to love the game, and I've mentioned that before. And what does that mean exactly? Is like, are you watching hockey on TV because you're trying to get better at coaching? Are you utilizing resources? Are you thinking about it constantly? Maybe not at the right time sometimes, that you should be thinking about and stressing about it. But that love, and a lot of people can say, I love the game, but it's like, well, like, do you actually? Number two is every good coach you have to really care about the kids. And again, a lot of people say they care about the kids, but do you care about them as people? Do you care about, I think we had 9 alumni on the ice the other day, and that's evidence of a good coaching staff and people that stay connected throughout the years. And then third, you have to be willing to change, I think is really key in how you think. So you ask, what's the coaching philosophy? And that's a big part of it, is you have to be willing to change within individual players, and you have to be willing to change. Maybe it's different levels, or just over time, changes that become necessary for you to be successful. So you think about coaches that have coached at the NCAA or pro level that have won championships 20 years apart. And it's like, that's another, like, evidence of, well, obviously they've been able to be willing to change. And then there's other coaches that have a short period of success, and then they don't anymore. So those are the three things. And then as far as, like, the biggest thing for me coaching these kids is you have to be yourself as a player. So that's something that I work on with the guys all the time. It's like, if you want to add something to your game, you have to do it your way.
Yep.
and not emulate something someone else is doing, because first of all, what got you to this point is you, and second of all, if you try to not be you, it affects you emotionally, physically, all those things. So if you try to completely change your game, you'll oftentimes see players kind of not understand the adversity that they're like about to face because of that. Like, and I'm really speaking of emotionally and mentally right now, which is what we deal with at the high school level a lot, because players want to get better, understandably. But so yeah, that's the biggest thing, is helping and then reminding players what they're good at and how to enhance their deficiencies in their own specific way.
Awesome. Pat, what about you? Coaching philosophy?
Yeah, I
anything
mean,
change?
it could be a long answer, but I'm going to keep it very short. I mean, I think I've changed a lot in the years. I don't think my philosophy of like accountability and stuff like that's ever changed. But I think the biggest thing for me personally is, and I know it's our whole staff kind of believes in this, but like, you know, and he mentioned a little bit, but you know, two things for me is like, if your kids that you coached at any level, high school is a lot easier to say just because they're becoming young men and they're close to being out of their houses and stuff, so it's a better way to bring it. But like, do they want to continue to talk to you? You know, do they respect, like, you know, the time you put in to them and like how much you cared about them, you know? And then the second thing is the same kind of thing, but like, you know, are you setting them up for success after their high school career? And everyone always thinks it's like about playing in the North American League or USHL, or I'm not even talking about hockey. You know what I mean? Because most of them aren't going to play at pass. But so I mean that for me is like, so I guess the easiest answer is just, what's the experience like on a daily basis for these kids? Yeah. And that's hard. And we talk about it all the time as a staff. And I talk to other staffs that I coach with. I talk to, you know, Gopher hockey coaches. All that stuff is, sometimes you just get a little too wrapped up in, you know, the wins and losses. And if your kids are coming to the rink every single day and having fun and goofing around and then can focus when they get on the ice, then you're probably doing the right thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We'll skip around here, maybe going on that notion or theme of kind of the continual learning, and obviously that being a big part of the coaching process. You know, what resources, things, whether it's online, whether it's you know, social media, what are you continuing to go to or lean on as far as kind of the resources that you're continuing to learn from?
Well, there's specific ones that I could list off, just good websites or YouTube videos. But I think, again, it comes back to like a self-awareness and attitude towards it coming in, of just continually trying to get better. The coach's site is one of my favorites right now. They do a lot of really good presentations on every area of hockey, whether that be, you know, not related to hockey. There was one I watched the other day, how social media affects kids, or really nitty gritty, you know, D-zone coverage presentation. So I guess it's just an attitude of it. And then the other thing that I've started to kind of do more is, like, as I watch our film, I'm not just looking for things I can show kids, but I'm literally just watching the game and trying to think of whether that's drills or whether that's small area games or stuff we can do to help the team as a whole, I guess. So it's basically just watching hockey and, you know, finding as much good stuff as you can. You do have to be careful when you do look online that you are getting good stuff.
Yeah.
There's so much out there that, like, drills, I've really started to realize, like, are so overrated. Like, there's 1 million drills. The drill doesn't matter. It's how you coach it and why you're doing it, and how it relates to your team. So I don't want it to come off as, you know, you have to go find stuff to get better. you really don't. You have to watch the game and continually think about different things you can do to help the kids.
Would you say you're developing like more and more drills just kind of on your own from that process that you've been working at?
I think we as a staff have kind of narrowed it down to like core type drills that we will modify in different ways to work on different things, whether that's starting from a different spot or ending from a different spot or adding one thing to it. But like, there's no reason to go look up 17 different 3-on-2 rush drills. We can start it the same way pretty much every single time if we want to work on a specific thing, whether there's a back checker involved or anything like that. Like, small tweaks, I guess you could say, is a different drill, but it's the same core. It's the same core setup that we're just trying to tweak for what we need to work on for the week.
So speaking of drills, and maybe for the listeners out there, I did think of maybe a little fun segment to challenge Miles. We'll open up actually to both Pat and Miles here, but this little segment's going to be called the Small Area Games Rapid Fire segment. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually list various hockey skills or tactics, if you would, and after each one, we'll give you a beat here, but we'd love to.
Can I rant on small area games
absolutely.
Before you start?
Please do.
So, if you've listened to any podcasts or got any of my email communication, if you're a Wayzata coach or anything, it's my biggest crusade right now over the last couple of years. Small area games, especially for our youth players, are the best way to teach hockey everything. Hockey sense, skills, skill development, touches, whatever. So the point I want to get across, though, right now is I think a lot of people take that in and they do small area games maybe at the last 15 minutes of practice, every single practice. And I've said this before, but like, coaches think that's their time to let them play. So you have to decide. There's two categories, I think. Either you're dropping the puck 3-on-3 to get the cobwebs out and to let the kids have fun. That's fine. That's awesome. We do that all the time. Or you're trying to get better at something. So if you're trying to get better at something, you need to work hard at designing something that will accomplish that and coaching during it. So yeah, and the other thing I'd like to say is, like, as far as the end of practice, kind of typical setup for youth practice. Skating and skill work is the first whatever percent, 40%, 50%. Hopefully it's higher than what it is, because that's a non-negotiable. Skating and skill work needs to be done at every level. And then you have your scripted drills of you go here, we're working on our 2-on-1 rushes. That's fine. I'm not against those drills in all cases. And then you have, at the end, your 15 minutes. I'd like to see it change to skating and skill work, game, scripted drill, game.
Yeah.
So, like, there's no reason we can't be inserting small area games into the beginning, middle, and end of a practice in the bucket of trying to work on something. So
it's a good plug. If you haven't gotten Miles' PDF with a ton of small area games on it, please reach out to him and ask for it. It's brilliant, and there's a lot of good stuff on there. Maybe just starting off, let's go, puck possession. What would be a small area game you could think of, puck possession or puck control?
Depends on what area of the ice you're looking at doing that. I know one offensive zone one we do is a 4-on-4 setup with a line just inside the blue line, maybe 10 feet, and then a line around making a big crease. And so it's 4-on-4, and you always have to have a guy in the high ice area, so the line between the blue line and the line you've put on the ice. And to get possession, you have to make one pass to a teammate inside the game. And when you get possession, when you're on offense, you can exchange with a player up in the high ice. And the big crease, if you have to be inside the big crease to for a goal to count. One of your players has to be inside there. So just like O-zone possession, quick transition back and forth. How do you manage pucks when you don't have a play and you still want to keep it? So if you're rolling up the wall and they're squeezing you, why don't we throw it in the weak side corner to have somebody go get it? So it's like just O-zone play of trying to possess the puck as much as possible.
Well, I mean, I got a couple, but what I was going to say before that, and it's because that's perfect. But if you think about, so I coached U10 hockey as well, and I've coached it a few times, and we've started doing that specific drill with them for one main reason. Obviously, it's playing, but it's when we're coaching our U10 girls too. The things we always talk about is obviously moving your feet and getting to the net, right?
Yep.
And then also don't just grab the puck and throw it all over the ice, because they're all so nice and they just want to pass it and all that stuff. So that drill right there specifically is teaching like 3 different concepts of skills. That front presence, when you tell them that on the bench, they're like, "What do you mean? I was there." No, you weren't actually in front of the goalie. Keeping a person high and working with your all. I don't want to say like we're not trying to run a 5-man offense in U10 hockey, but like we actually start using the points, that's how you use your points, and that keeps those girls involved. You know what I mean? Whatever. And then also the last one is just the interaction of how you move throughout the offensive zone in a group of 3, 4, or 5, whatever the case may be. So I guess what I was thinking as he was talking was like small area games. There's just like he said, like if you're just gonna let them play, but there's ways to like work on specific situations where you're kind of watching instead of let them play in 5-on-5. But I think the biggest thing I would piggyback on the whole thing is kids at a young age specifically, and even our high school guys sometimes, is it's good to like stop them and actually like go talk to them on the board for a few minutes and show them exactly what they're supposed to be doing, because it engages their brain a little bit too.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a good one. I'd say invest in spray paint for sure if you're going to dial that one up. Next one.
Check with the rink manager first.
Yeah, that's probably a great call. Next one, transition or line rush?
Transition or line rush? Ooh. So neutral zone, you have the nets kind of inside the blue line on both sides, maybe halfway in between the top of the circles and the blue line. So you're playing with, half the ice. You have 2 lines behind the nets, behind the goal lines of where the nets are now at, and you start out 2-on-2, and you can say a rule is you have to pass to, and the players on your team are by your goalie. You have to pass to those players, and then they can go, D to D, and then have one of those players activate. And so now you're getting a 3-on-2 basically that starts at the top of the circles in the D zone, which the vast majority of 3-on-2s will start in your D zone.
Yep.
And so that's a good one just to get like a 3-on-2 touch of, and then you have to manage pucks and not turn them over so that, if there's a shot attempt or whatever, how do we retrieve those pucks and everything like that. So it's like just continually 3-on-2s back and forth, basically.
That's a good one. Special teams.
Special teams. Anything odd numbered. You could 100 different 3-on-1, 4-on-2, 5-on, 6-on-4 type stuff. But the classic one is you cut the zone halfway and you have a 2 nets on the goal lines, and you play a 4-on-2 on both sides, and then the killers, the 2 guys, have to get the puck to their team on the other side. And so that's one that we'll do either before or after our actual power play practice with our units, just to get, again, everyone touches. That's another discussion on whether youth teams should have power play units. Obviously, I don't think they should until the very high levels. But if you're a BAM AA team and you do have power play units, doing power play small area games is going to give. Maybe you missed on a kid that has power play skills and he can show it in a small area game, and then you might think about giving them an opportunity versus picking your best 5 players for your power play 1 unit. And, a lot of times those kids don't get a chance towards the end of the year of showing that they can do it.
Yeah, I'd say that one's a good eye opener for just being able to maybe uncover some kids that have skill to be on power plays or even penalty kill that maybe you didn't think about right away. Angling.
I think my favorite one right now, I actually got this from Pete Samardzija, our goalie coach. They did it at Dubuque in the USHL, is you kind of line the players up. You could use the bench side on the red line or close to the red line, and the coach is in the ref's crease. And again, same nets as the transition one in the neutral zone. And you throw a puck to one side, and the attacking team has to go behind the net and pick up that puck, and then the defending team just has to hit the nearest neutral zone dot right here with their skates, and then they have to go set an angle 2-on-2, and if they cause a stop before the red line, they get to add a player, so it's a 3-on-2. If they don't set their angle properly and cause a stop, or the other guys make a good play and they get across the red line, they get to add a player, and then you have your 3-on-2 scoring goals too right there.
It's a good one. Last one maybe for those out there that may want to work, have a goalie coach or may spend time with their goalie at the beginning of practice to where you're not using him. No goalie, small area game. What would be one you can think of there?
If you're lucky enough to have a full sheet of ice at the youth level, obviously we're privileged to have it every day. But my favorite one is I got this from a Chicago Steel head coach in the USHL. It's called the Man City 4-on-4, and so basically he got it from, I think, Pep Guardiola, the coach for Man City. And it's a 4-on-4 in the neutral zone, kind of that same area we we're just talking about, just inside the blue lines. And you kind of give it to one team, and the rules are whatever team has it, the other team cannot go inside the center face-off circle at all. They cannot skate in there. And how you get a point is if you pass it into the center circle, and then that player passes it to a different player out. And so what you're really working, you think it might be a neutral zone drill, it's really an offensive zone. How do we score more goals? Because we're making interior plays. That's where goals are scored. You think bumper on the power play, or you think bumper just 5-on-5. How do we get the puck into that area, and how do we support it out to a different player? So, and then the other thing with that is, like, how do we manage? Sound like a broken record, but how do we manage pucks when we don't have the play into the middle, and how do we extend possession? So, if you're in the neutral zone and you're getting squeezed off at the blue line, and you have no play, can we chuck it cross ice because we have a guy kind of close to go retrieve that puck? Or can we use the wall? Or basically, another coaching point that I would do with that one is, like, we don't want any forced plays here. And a forced play would be what they're going to try to do when you first start this drill, which is sauce it over sticks and pass it through people's feet. If you do that, you can add, 5-10 push-ups. I'd rather have you in this type of situation turn the puck over because someone made a good defensive play on you than you looking up and making a forced play through someone, because that's a horrible habit. And if we can get the habit of, I have no best play into the middle, how do I extend possession by switching sides or using the wall? So
Teaching the hockey IQ part of it too.
Yeah,
for sure. Awesome. Well, that's it for small area games rapid fire. Next one, tell me about, maybe from your perspective, the challenges, threats to youth high school hockey that you're seeing right now, maybe specific to the state of Minnesota or more broadly, I guess, across the U.S. What are the biggest challenges or threats that you're seeing to the game from the youth and the high school level?
It's a lot of people like to complain or talk a lot about Minnesota hockey and where it's at right now. Everyone has their own opinions, but the biggest thing for me is Minnesota hockey needs to show leadership and put game limits on our 12U and 14U players. Without their leadership, it will never get solved, because what happens is, we're at Wayzata. If I imposed a game limit on our Bantam players of 45 or 50 games, I might be fired. because what happens is the next town over is playing that many more games, and they are perceived as getting better because of it. And so if you look at what Finland does, what Sweden does, even what Norway does, they're all on the same page with their clubs of this is how we do things. And I think if Minnesota hockey came out with that, that would get everyone on the same page of we need more practices than games. I don't even know if 2-to-1 is possible, 2-to-1 ratio, because of ice considerations, but we have to get closer to that because, and I don't know if I've been saying this for so long that I don't know if people are actually understanding why I'm so passionate about it, but when you play a game in youth hockey, the best players get better because they have the puck more. So if we're treating 12U hockey on the girls or boys side with no limitations on games, what we're doing if you choose to play a lot of games is we are essentially selecting the top players at that age because we're giving them the opportunities to get better and we're not giving the other kids the opportunities to get better.
Yeah. Not to mention the other factors that come into that with maybe coaches that are trying to win the game and maybe shortening the bench at those different age levels, which I don't think is...
And that's like a separate conversation. Like,
Yeah.
You should never do that. And I think there's so many well-intentioned coaches of like actually do believe that you learn hockey sense through playing a hockey game. And that might be true. You might learn, but what you do on a team, and the good coaches are trying to get everyone to play as a team. What will happen is you will sort yourself into roles on that team at 12 years old. So if you're a weaker player and you're a team guy and you play a lot of games, well, what are you going to do? You're going to make the simple play. You're going to chip it out. You're going to not play as much or whatever and do it for the team, which is great. But there shouldn't be roles on 12-year-old hockey teams of, I'm a third line checker.
Yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous.
Do you think the biggest issue for Minnesota hockey is more enforcement if they were to look at, in a perfect world, let's say they found a way to impose some kind of a game maximum for the 12U and 14U levels? Do you think the biggest issue they see is the enforcement of it and how they're actually going to monitor and potentially penalize or,
you'd have to ask them why they don't do it. It's possible they believe that the competition is the other model is out there is playing more games, and they might not believe that that's not. It's keeping up with the Joneses a little bit, I think, too. Like if you look at Colorado or Michigan or whatever with their hockey clubs, they're playing a lot of games, and I think it's trying to keep up with that. I don't know. Maybe you have an opinion on that piece of it.
I mean, I just think, I guess this easy answer is like, who regulates it, even if there is rules. That's number one. Like, does it come down to a district? Because they try to do it that way, Minnesota Hockey and USA Hockey. Does it come down to an actual association? Does it come down to who's ever in charge of that, the board? It's just, and then at the end of the day, those positions aren't, like politically based, places where either you're making money or you have sways on different things. Yeah. It's all about the kids. And so it's like, so you can only take so much feedback and grief and everything else when people are complaining on both sides of the fence. So that's number one. But to back up on like that part of the game thing is for me is number one, you hit the nail on the head with the role playing situation, which is hilarious, but I see it happening all the time. But moreover than that, the people I think don't talk about as much as it is, especially and I say specifically at the Bantam level. These kids are going through puberty and they're emotional and they are just hard-nosed. We want them to be hard-nosed. We want them to be committed. We want them to be accountable, all those things. But at the end of the day, if you're playing, 75 games or whatever it is, you're playing 5 games in a tournament with 14 skaters. One breaks his arm, 2 are sick, and it's like then it's even worse what we talked about. Then you shorten the bench by not even shortening the bench.
Yeah.
And then, which is fine. If your new guys are getting to touch a puck and you're battling and maybe you find a way to win with 11 skaters, but then at the end of the day, it's now we got to redo that again. We got to do it again, and we got to do it again, and we got to do it again. And at the end, then you never. I feel like then what happens is people are sick or hurt or whatever the case may be, or they have something going on. What's the first thing they miss? Practice. They're not going to miss a game.
Yeah.
So it's just
Well,
it's tough.
Comes back to the question of like what's really important here, like winning or actually developing the kids
Well,
that way.
and I want to get I want to say this too. It's like I'm not like anti-game. Like I think games are great, but when you play too many, all these issues come up. And games are great for teamwork and enthusiasm and having fun and all these things and going out of town on out of town tournaments. But when you play 5 games up in Roseau and then you play on Tuesday night, that Tuesday night's worthless, in my opinion. Yeah. So,
and I think also to finish it is like, you know, at that age level, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, if you have the time to make the ability to have more games or less games or whatever the case may be, it's totally fine. But at like the junior hockey level specifically, I think is the best way to do it, because everyone wants to get there, is they play a lot of Friday, Saturdays, maybe even Sunday games, so they still get 4 practices a day. Yeah. College hockey is the same model. Now it just comes down to a calendar year, how many games you can get in, and for development it's great. But if you're talking about youth hockey, like you got a game on Monday night, you got a couple days off of practice, and then you're going up to, you know, Moorhead for 4 games, and then you haven't practiced in 7 days, and it is what it is. So
yeah.
Scheduling comes down to it, I think, as well. But I think my last message to all coaches and managers out there and youth levels, it's okay to say no once in a while.
Yeah.
No to another scrimmage, no to another out-of-town tournament, no to, you know, whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You don't need to do a back-to-back scrimmage festival on a Saturday. Go watch the Wild or something, or,
yeah.
you know, go hang out and do something else.
Well, there's plenty of ways to inject those, you know, game-like experiences back into practice.
Small area games.
Exactly.
Practices can be really fun if you want it to be.
Exactly.
yeah.
Last topic here, and before we wrap, but like curious about, you know, coaching maybe more of the mental side of the game. I know we talked about it a little bit, but, you know, I think, at least in my opinion, it's been something that I think I've seen a lot more prevalent. You know, at least with our high schoolers in the last couple of years. You know, anything that you've changed maybe from like your own coaching philosophy or like approach, and really kind of helping more on the mental side of the game that maybe wasn't there or wasn't as big of a deal, or brought to the forefront maybe 10 years ago?
Yeah. Number one, you have to make sure that they're okay. For like, you got to know what's going on in their life and make sure that they're okay, because it could be something you're unaware of, and if you don't know that information, then you have 0 chance.
Yeah.
So talking to them about non-hockey stuff as much as you can, even with any age kids.
Yeah.
You have to do that first. As far as changes of how I've kind of developed as a coach, I think most of the stuff that I've changed is in-game feedback. And I think when I first started, I was correcting a lot of mistakes on the bench. And I think it's when you play a game, it's not the place to fix deficiencies in players. It's not practice, and you can't work on something in a game. You're just trying to win the game and be a good teammate and all those things, and battle and work hard. So when somebody makes like the example that I'll bring up is like, if a player is struggling to get his shot off quick enough, when that inevitably gets ramped up into the net in a game, saying you got to get that off quicker is like, basically what you've done is you've just pointed out to the kid his shot is slow. That's what you're telling him. You have to get that off quicker. He's like, I know. But what you've told him as a coach is like, again, another like reinforcement of like that part of your game isn't very good. And so fixing deficiencies during a game or letting them know what they're bad at is like the worst thing you could do, probably. But in a game, what you should be doing is either attitude adjustments of like negative body language needs to get fixed like as soon as possible.
Yep.
And then like if a player is kind of like disengaged or maybe like kind of like seems like he's out of it a little bit, just like, again, that's, you could call that an attitude adjustment too, but like just some sort of trigger that you can have with them to like try to wake them up or encourage them. And then the other thing is obviously like anything tactical is definitely, okay to say to a player that like, this is what they're doing, this is what the other team's trying to do. Let's be aware of that and try to adjust. So that's kind of like in-game development that I've had, is trying to be really cognizant of that. And then the second thing is ties into mental game is being really consistent with what you say over time. Mixed messaging is like the worst for kids, especially for anyone. But like the terminology that you use and the situations, even if something doesn't work out, the way you're trying to teach it, it's okay to not say anything about that particular play. And just over time, and it's going to take 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks for something to set in, but the words you use being the same is important, I think. And then, it's hard. Like the mental side is so hard. So I think you have to be self-aware enough to know if a player is really struggling, possibly suggesting professional help with this type of stuff. And sports psychology is such a good tool for our players now. And being self-aware enough to be like, I don't know if I can help this situation. Have you thought about doing this?
Yeah.
Instead. So.
Anything to add there?
I just think the biggest thing that I've learned over the years is just like, how do you get their undivided attention, and whatever that means. Like when if you're giving a speech with, the PWAA team and you're before the game, give me 5 minutes, pay attention. How do you get their undivided attention? I don't think you probably will get all of it, but you'll get some percentage of it. Or is it like, pull one out of the locker room, pull a line out of the locker room, and then forgetting about the hockey part about it, like looking, seeing what I've learned too is, you know your kids well enough, their, demeanor and their, how they operate. And if you see them acting, it's happened a few times to us lately. It's just like pull them aside and just be like, you all right?
Yeah.
And they want to say something. You can tell they want to say something. And it might just be something as dumb as like, oh, I really struggling at school right now.
Yeah.
It's like, well, cool. Or like, whatever. And so it's just undivided attention, getting that at some point, whether it's for 30 seconds or a minute. And then also just keeping tabs on what they look like, how they're acting, and they could be, it goes both spectrums too. They could be super sad or they could be like just on edge all the time. No, neither are probably good. So it's just ask them.
Biggest foundation of that probably just being having that mutual kind of care between coach and player too really unlocks those conversations even being able to happen too.
Yeah, I was listening to a talk of this has been said by a bunch of coaches, but it was the Princeton women's hockey coach, I think, and she said something along the lines of every time you make a personal connection with a player, you're putting a quarter in the piggy bank, and you can withdraw only what you have in there, and withdrawal will be asking them to block a shot in third period. So if there's no quarters in that piggy bank, then there's no chance they're gonna do anything like that for you.
Did we have a few quarters in the piggy bank last night?
Yeah, about 11.
Yeah,
So there you go. I got 11 to use tomorrow.
Awesome. Maybe one more fun question here, and then we'll wrap this up. Where did the phrase "nice coaching miles" come from?
That was a situation that I probably shouldn't get into, but
That's fair.
it was, I'll say this, it was in intermission of a high school game, and it was a phrase directed at me, and it sounds like a positive phrase, but it wasn't in the situation. And we've turned it into a very funny joke, or inside joke of nice coaching Miles when things either go bad or good. So that's a good one.
Universal.
That's good. And for those that don't know, Miles actually is a super talented woodworking craftsman now. What's your favorite piece that you've actually worked on as far as the woodworking goes? The Deeth by 1,000 Cuts, if you don't already follow him on the socials.
Deeth by 1,000 Cuts, Instagram, check it out. They are, I wouldn't say I'm talented, but I, again, tie it back to coaching. What do I spend most of my time on at home if I'm not watching coaching videos is YouTube videos on woodworking. So I had somebody ask me the other day, they said, how do you know how to do all this stuff? And I said, well, I learned.
I can tell you right now, my father-in-law always says the same thing. My brother-in-law, like, if you want to fix something, just like YouTube it. And it don't work for me. Same with this. Like, I wouldn't be able to grab a piece of wood and YouTube, like, how do you make a whatever. And just, some people have good talents with that. Like, it's just you're good at it.
Rabbit,
2 folks that have said you're
rabbit,
talented at it.
Whatever.
A rabbit joint. It's called a rebate in England.
That's a type of wood.
No, a joint. A rabbit.
Oh, like,
yeah, that's what it's called.
So favorite thing you've created?
Oh, favorite thing I've created? Got to be my bed frame that is made from solid oak and oak plywood, and we got a new mattress for it too, and it's no creaks or any deficiencies in the structural integrity of it so far. So check that out, Deeth by 1,000 Cuts.
oh my Lord.
Awesome. Well, I don't know if they'll ever let me guest host another one here, but I appreciate both of your time. Obviously, I've learned a lot over the years from you both and continue to, so appreciate the time today. And how can folks get a hold of you, Miles, if they want you to walk through the drills that you've maybe outlined today, questions, advice? How do folks get a hold of you?
Something that we always say, and I know Pat says this a lot too, is if you're in the area and you see us at the rink, just come over and say hi.
Old school.
I love to talk.
Love hockey talk.
Love hockey talk. I love hearing about what people are facing, whether that's good or bad or any of that stuff. But then email at hockeyops@wayzatahockey.org as well.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Thanks.